all for coming. It's a smaller group than we had last time, but we got a lot accomplished, not accomplished, we got a lot discussed at the last meeting, and I think we can get a lot discussed again tonight. Again, the purpose of this workshop is to give me better direction, good direction, so that I know where we should be going with the town and the activities and what the priorities are, so that I have a better understanding of what to present to the select board when, you know, especially when it comes to budget season. So, tonight, I want to start with the revaluation. First of all, let's go around the room. I'm not sure that everybody knows everybody else. So, Sean, will you start, please?
Sean Bean, I'm on the select board, just started my full first term. Also on the cemetery committee and the new formed building committee.
I'm Sally Dwyer, for those of you who don't know me, and I am also on the select board, and I am also on the building committee. Kind of excited about seeing what we can do with our much needed work on our building.
Heidi Burrows, I'm Finance and HR Director at the town, and I'm also on the Cemetery Committee, and anywhere else I'm needed.
Denise Ducharme, Town Manager. I delegate to everybody.
I'm Cheyenne Stevens. I am the Town Clerk, Treasurer, and Registrar of Voters.
I'm Danny Morshed. I'm the Recreation, well, now Parks and Recreation Director.
Julie Forbes, run the library, anything else people will let me run. I'm on a lot of committees, but not those two.
We can
Yeah.
change that.
We're looking.
Did I just hear her volunteer?
I thought I heard that.
Did you?
I'm Robin Turk. I'm on the planning board and the budget advisory committee.
Mary Tomlinson on the Planning Board and the Budget Advisory Committee.
Dick Bartlett, Madison Electric on the Budget Committee, and Sally's neighbor.
Peter Elias, Budget Advisory Committee.
I'm Tim Curtis, concerned citizen, and enough knowledge to be dangerous.
Very good.
I'm Jack Ducharme on the Budget Advisory Committee.
Kenneth Moore, just on the advisory board.
Patrick Dolan, Finance Manager, Somerset County, on the advisory board for budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that, everybody. And if anybody made a new friend tonight, congratulations. I just want to, I have a loud voice and I speak loudly and I project, and nobody worries about me catching me on microphone. But if you have a softer voice, please speak up so that it can be put on the camera and captured, because this this workshop will be put out on Channel 11's probably YouTube channel or something. So, all right. First thing that I'm going to do tonight is introduce our county administrator and former town manager, Tim Curtis. He wants to talk about revaluation and the industrial side of market. Did I say that right?
You got it. You got the gist of it.
Close enough.
So I did bring some handouts, so I'll make my way around here.
Oh, you're going to take it?
Yeah, I'll take care. Thank you.
Notice she's the only one who got up.
I am a public servant.
Julie, you did not say beloved town librarian.
I'm not sure if I am beloved, but relatively beloved.
So, I can see this circle here.
Face the people.
I'll try to
Bring your back to me, I don't care.
be right about here. So thank you, Denise, and I want to do a brief history lesson and talk about the industrial tax base in Madison. You all know what you pay for taxes, and you all know that it's gone up steadily, and there's lots of reasons for that. One of the things that I think that we lose sight of is the fact that the mill rate has gone down because property values have gone up. And budgets have also gone up, and other things have changed. So the shift has gone away from industry paying a large amount of the taxes to homeowners and businesses paying a large amount of the taxes. And in that, if you go back to the last 4 years, as the mill rate's gone down every year, your industries, CMP, one of your largest taxpayers, say about a $22 million base in Madison. Eagle Creek, that owns the hydroelectric dams, they've got about a $38 million base in Madison. Their taxes have gone down because their valuations have not gone up, because they're industrial and they take a different type of valuation. But as that mill rate goes down, they pay less money in taxes every year. Even a startup like GoLab and Timber HP, while they're getting their feet underneath them, they're benefiting because that mill rate goes down. And so that has caused a shift. But the handout that I gave you is a one-pager. If you want the deep dive into all the industrial tax base, that's in another handout. You're welcome to take those and read them at your leisure, and then start your fire with them. So if you go back to 2013, Madison's valuation always came in consistently year after year, right about $500 million. And of that $500 million, $230 million of it was Madison Paper. And so Madison Paper paid 45 cents of every tax dollar back in 2013. And because of that, the mill rate was reasonable, 16.4. The average value of your house, and I know it varies depending on where you live, but the average value was $100,000, so property taxes were around $1,640. Now, that's what we call in our tax base the good old days, where you had one large taxpayer that paid almost half of your taxes. If you go back a little bit further into the early 2000s and 90s, Madison Paper at their height, I think, was 65 cents. 65 cents on the dollar is what basically Madison Paper paid. So then that year came in 2014 where the bottom started to drop out. Madison Paper asked for a reevaluation. They were still making paper, but the value of their product was dropping. Nobody was buying newspapers anymore. Half of the mill was owned by the New York Times. And so the whole process, and some of you were there to see it all happen. Dick was an assessor back then. And then when Bill Van Tynen did this work with Madison Paper, the number finally came out that we lost $130 million of value overnight. The value dropped from 229 down to 80 million, so that's almost 150 million overnight. And so we all remember that, and so the tax rate went up and all that. That's really when the shift started. And if you go down to the next slide, 2018, our valuation now has dropped down to about $350 million with that major loss of Madison Paper. And the mill rate has gone up. The housing values hadn't really changed. And so now for the same house you were paying $2,150 that you were paying $1,640 on. So everybody's taxes went up about $500. And it stayed that way on average. It stayed that way for several years. And I remember with that mill rate in the 20s, by this time I was the town manager, and the selectmen would ask, what is it going to take to get that mill rate back down to 16? And I'm like, it ain't going to happen, because you'll just never have that much valuation. And so understanding, I think this crowd has heard this speech before, you'll never get that mill back up to 200 million valuation, because it had a $200 million paper machine in it. And that $200 million paper machine had no state subsidies on it. There was no Betty, no better, no tax breaks, no 50%. It was fully taxable. Anything that goes in there now is going to benefit from all the tax breaks that the state gives. So it'll only be taxed at 50 cents on the dollar. So GoLab and Timber HP can put $30 million worth of equipment in there but it's only gonna be taxable at about 15 million. So the state will reimburse you through those programs. So I know that in the average taxpayer's mind, mill was running, taxes were low. Mill closed, taxes go up. Mill's running again, why are my taxes still going up? They should be coming down. But you're just not gonna be able to recapture that value in there anymore. So I remember talking to a selectman, I won't name, but his name rhymes with Fortin. He said, we gotta get the mill rate back down to 16. I said, it's impossible. He goes, that's unacceptable. I said, it's math. You just can't do it. So now fast forward to 2024. Well, my golly, our valuation is back almost to 500 million again. It's 478. And look at that mill rate is down to 16. Well, this is great. Our mill rate's down, our valuation's back up, but now all that valuation has shifted from industry to you and me as property owners and small businesses. And so back in the good old days, industry paid 50 to 60% of the taxes. Now, industry pays about 24% of the taxes, and homeowners and small business pays about 76% of the taxes in Madison. So that's the significant shift that you have seen. Because now, even though that mill rate's back down lower than it was in 2013, the average home value is up 50%. And now you're sitting at a tax bill of $2,400. So here's the
Tim?
here's the bad news.
May I interrupt you?
Go right ahead.
I don't recall the, I know when I got my tax bill this year, it was, what, 21 something?
The mill rate?
The mill rate.
Mill rate is 1610.
16.1.
This year was 1610.
We haven't had a mill rate above 20.
I guess I've got to take another look
Four or
at that
5 years.
because
Unless you've gotten a special one.
yeah.
Because you're
I
selling.
got to talk to you about that.
Special former.
She might switch with hers. So,
High rent district.
but here's what Denise and the select board and Shirley, the assessor's agent, have got to wrestle with now. Because the state has now set your 25 valuation at over 600 million, 602 million. That is an absolutely crazy large number. I don't think the town has ever, even when Madison paper was rolling, I don't think we've ever hit 600 million. I've gone back and I've never seen it. So let me just pause and say at this point, I greatly respect Bill Van Tynen. I have learned a lot from Bill Van Tynen. I am not Bill Van Tynen. Shirley is not Bill Van Tynen. And the paperwork and the spreadsheets that we have from the 30 years that he put into the town office, we still use and we still rely on quite a bit. So one of the things that Bill was good at was kind of teaching you what the forecast and the impact would be. So he showed me, if you get a state valuation, he showed me where to go to plug it in. And this state valuation of 600 million, sadly, is going to put Madison in about a $500,000 hole to start the budget process. Because that $600 million valuation is going to hurt your revenue sharing. That $600 million valuation is going to hurt your state aid to education. That $600 million valuation is going to cause you to have to pay about $100,000 more in county taxes if the county budget comes in flat. So if you assume that the town budget comes in with no increase, the school budget comes in with no increase, and the county budget comes in with no increase, you're automatically going to be short $500,000 just because of that $600,000 value. How does,
If I interrupt you.
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
Is that, if we go up to the 602 million, or if we stay where we are and ignore the 602 million?
Doesn't matter. Because the state automatically calculates your revenue sharing based on this number.
Okay.
So even if the selectmen say, well, we're not going to raise people's valuations again, when it comes to the budget, their taxes are going to go up because you have to come up with another $500,000. So when the state looks at your valuation, so Shirley does all this work and she creates the whole valuation for the town, and we submit all those numbers to the state, to Maine Revenue Service. Then they go back about a year and they take a look at sales. Now, I thought we would weather the storm a little bit better. No, I was being too optimistic about the housing inflation. They looked at 56 sales from 22 and 23. And of those 56 sales, every one of them was sold for more than the property was valued at. If you go back over the years and look at those, that's what's called the sales ratio analysis. If you go back and look at that, usually about a third of the sales are for less than what it's valued and the rest are more. Those days, we're not in those days anymore. Anybody that's in real estate knows that you're still getting a significant, strong price. And we haven't caught up fast enough with our valuations. So this one was, again, the worst I've ever seen, which is why this $600 million figure is so high. You had 60%, in other words, the median price was 60% above the valuation. So the state takes that number of 60 and they multiply it they divide it into the numbers that you submitted. So we may have submitted $440,000 or $440 million to this Maine Revenue and said, we think this is what our valuation is. Maine Revenue says, not based on your sales ratio, not. And so they take your number that you plugged in, multiply it or divide it by that sales ratio, and it comes up to $602 million. So that's what the state says your number is. Is it fair? Is it equitable? Probably not, but it's the way the state does it, and there's really no changing it because they do it to everybody. In Somerset County, the average town's valuation went up 12% in this 25. I looked at Franklin County. The average town in Franklin went up 12%. So in our region, 12% was pretty normal. We're 26%. So we're twice the average. Some of it has to do with houses on the lake, not all of it. You did have a house sell for $535,000 in that time, and it was valued at $180,000. You had a house sell for $640,000 at that time, it was valued for $220,000. So those are the outliers, but still they go into that impact. So every one of those houses was high. So that being said, I would, what can you do? So my recommendation is, you look at your budget as close as you can to try to keep it flat. The county budget, Patrick and I debate about this, but I think that we can use some of our undesignated fund balance to come in flat. I have a unique position on the school board, and so I'll do all that I can. I'm only one of 7. I'll do all that I can to try to get that school budget to come in flat. But again, even if all 3 of those budgets come in flat, you're already $500,000 in the hole. One of the things you can do is the next year's sales ratio numbers are already there. They just haven't been calculated yet. You can go to the transfer tax portal at Maine Revenue and you can look at every sale. I looked at it yesterday. It took me about 20 minutes, and there's already, from that same time period that will affect your next valuation, there's already about 50 sales. So now you can, if somebody wants to take the time to do it at the town office, you can go through every one of those sales and compare them to what's in Trio right now for your valuation. And that way you'll get an idea, are we getting better? Are we doing better than 60%? Or are we doing worse? So if the selectmen don't authorize Shirley to raise valuations again this year, you're just kicking the can down the road. If you don't get up close to 90% from that 61%, the state will ding your homestead exemptions. And so if somebody is getting a homestead exemption normally for $15,000, if Madison chooses to stay under valuation, that homestead valuation will show up on their tax bill at $8,000 or $9,000. So no matter how you slice it, the tax rate kind of, or the tax process kind of evens out. So I just lay that groundwork for you because I know that the biggest thing that the average resident gets frustrated about is their tax bill. And I was hoping that we had kind of crested this, but I still think you're about 3 years out before taxes stop going up. And so,
Even at 602 million?
yeah, it'll be higher next year. Yeah. Yeah, because you're still getting home sales for 500,000.
So what can we do in terms of the industrial side of it? Can we bring any of that value, does this include the industrial?
Oh, the 600 million does, yeah.
Yeah.
But of that 600 million, about 470 of it is just residential and small business.
Okay,
So you've got 11 industrial accounts. Some in natural gas, CMP, I can't list them all, but
okay.
Eagle Creek. And again, the good old days. This is where Bill Van Tynen was the best in the state. If you needed a hydro dam, if you needed a paper mill, if you needed a electric utility, if you need those things valued, Bill would do it. It's harder to find people that are good enough to do that anymore. But they're out there, there's a few of them. So this is beyond what Shirley can do. That's one thing I'll say. If you're relying on Shirley Bartlett, this is really beyond what she can do. And I've told her that. I'm not saying that disparagingly.
No.
You need to contact somebody to do that. And if you remember, well, a few of you might remember Dave Silk. Mm-hmm. Dave was our attorney that defended us against the Madison paper abatement claim. Dave knows the people that can do this. And so you've got Eagle Creek owns the hydro dams. 4 years ago, Eagle settled with the town for a set value, so they wouldn't keep going back and forth on the value. So that value was set around 40 million, and 39, and 38, and 38. So 38 million is where they are right now. That's obviously one of your biggest tax bases. In our agreement, we promised to do a full revaluation of Eagle Creek this year. And so somebody needs to do that. And that's probably where you need to talk with Dave Silk, who's the attorney. They can probably find people that will do that. But 4 years ago, Eagle Creek was like, oh, energy prices are going to come down and we're going to have less revenue. Well, energy prices haven't come down. And so somebody needs to look at all Eagle Creek's revenue so that they can base their valuation on that. CMP, probably worth looking at again. And then, God bless them, all the solar fields. Those, when I was town manager, I thought solar fields will at least help, boost up a little bit of the tax revenue. I hate to be negative about it, but the state really screwed us on solar fields. And so they basically don't even show up on your valuation anymore. These are $10, $12 million projects that don't even show up anymore. And the state might give you some money back for them, but it's another kerfuffle. But I would say with the industrial, you may be able to, well, you should go back and look at some of those industrial bases and ratchet them up a little bit, but you're not going to recover a whole lot of money on that. So, because it's all shifted to the homeowner now. So, any questions?
Aren't you just a
I know,
full
yeah.
of junk?
I don't know why she wanted me to go first.
I was going to say, if Shirley makes adjustments so that next year she has the valuation 90% or a little higher, we would not get hit on that then.
On the homestead exemption.
We would not get hit on the homestead exemption, we would not get hit on the veterans exemption, because
Right.
that's the other thing.
Right.
Your veterans exemption is going to take a hit also along with the homestead exemption.
So 90% is the goal, 60% is where you are as of last year. This doesn't count what you just did this year. You raised home values by 12 to 15% this year. And so you add that to the 61, you're a little bit closer. But if you wanted to get to 90 and get that full homestead, you'd probably have to raise values 20% next year.
Probably,
So,
yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
But then you'd also be taking a look at these sales ratios that are going on right now. So it's not as, we're not weathering it as well as I hoped we would.
So, how do we protect our low income and our elderly?
So,
I don't wanna tax them out of their homes.
that's exactly right, that's exactly right. So, again, one of the things I would suggest is that you survey some of them now. And by survey, I mean go on Trio, and you know who some of the most vulnerable people are. We just do, whether we know them because we know them from church, or we're related to them, or we know them because they're regulars on general assistance, or something like that. We know who the vulnerable people are. Identify a dozen of them, go back and review their taxes for the last 5 years, and see really how bad it's been. And then you can identify and make sure, first of all, make sure that all of those folks that are vulnerable are taking advantage of the state programs that are available right now.
Okay.
Because there are tax credit programs that are available to low-income folks right now. One thing that many towns down south in southern Maine who've experienced this sooner and to a greater degree than we have, many of those towns have developed their own protection programs for the most vulnerable taxpayers. And that you have to set aside some money for that. So basically you're taking money from taxation and protecting the lowest people in the tax vulnerability. So there are programs out there, some individual towns do it. Obviously the state tried to do it a couple of years ago by freezing taxes, but they didn't really figure out how much that would cost. And it was only based on your birthday. The only thing it was based on was your age. And so you had folks that had plenty of money and folks that had no money.
So if we bite the bullet and go to 20% next year, taxpayers are going to be furious. But does that get us where we need to be for going forward?
Just for 25.
Just for that year. And that's why I said it's probably important to take a look at your sales ratio right now so you can get an idea of what's coming. So if this gets better, if your sales ratio is 65, 70%, you can breathe a sigh of relief. If it goes down to 50%, it's like, oh man, hold on, here we go again. So what will happen is if you do raise your valuation 20% next year, that mill rate's going to go down to 14, maybe 13.80, because the more you keep raising that up, the lower it will go down. But you're going to have to raise more money from taxation. I think you're going to end up paying $100,000 more in county. Man, if your school, what you pay to the school doesn't go up $300,000, I'll be really surprised.
How does that work? Because we have fewer kids in the school system.
That's where the money from the state goes down. So if your valuation goes up and your student count goes down, the money from the state goes down. We were fighting this problem back in 2015, 2016, because our valuation was really high, but we had lost all that from Madison paper, but it wasn't realized at the state level yet. So they were still withholding funding for education, and we actually had to go and pass legislation to fight it and get that money.
So they don't recognize homeschool kids or charter school kids, even though they can use the school
It's only the enrolled students.
Even though we have homeschool kids that are on sports teams and are using the school facilities.
You are correct. So this is the ED 279. This is the essential services and programs. So the state will calculate every school district based on what the state determines to be essential programs. So the state says, for example, Madison's budget should be $7 million. And so Madison School District looks at that and says, okay, $7 million, that's good. Our budget's $11 million. Okay, so the town has to pay that extra, $4 million, plus a certain percentage of that $7 million. So that's why the town pays about $5 million towards the school budget every year. In that essential services and programs calculation, they take the school attendance or the total enrollment as of October 1st, and they take the year before and this year and they average them together. So, as you remember, it wasn't too long ago when you had Athens and Starks in there, and you had a total enrollment of 1,000. Then it went down to 800. Then Athens and Starks left. Then it went down to 600. Last October it was 542. That's pre-K through 12, 542 kids in your school, and an $11 million budget, okay? So,
That's a lot per kid ratio.
very, very large, yep. And, now let's not get into a fight with the school board.
No.
There's only one guy here right now. And so, but here's the reality. As of October 1st this year, without pre-K, we had 522. So I'm hoping we have 20 kids in pre-K so we can at least stay. But as that number goes down, the state says, well, they don't have enough school. They don't have enough kids. And so the state says you should have this many teachers. The state says based on your population, you should have this many ed techs. You should have this many librarians. You should have this many principals. And we, as a school district, have to honestly answer those questions and say, well, we have this many teachers, this many ed techs, this many principals. And so the state works it into their formula and says, you have more principals than really you should. And you have more ed techs than you should. You have more teachers than you should. Therefore, the funding from the state goes down. And then they multiply it by your valuation. And the higher your valuation is, the lower amount of money you get. So it's a two-edged sword as our student population goes down and our valuation goes up. So,
But is the school board looking at those numbers and saying, all right, the state wants us to have fewer teachers or fewer ed techs? Are you looking, not you personally, but is the school board looking at that saying, okay, how do we manage that personnel roster to meet what the state is telling us?
so the short answer is no. And since this is being recorded for posterity, I'll be a little careful here.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I think this is safe to say. When you elect residents to the school board, you're electing people that usually will come at things from one of two different ways. One is, doesn't matter what the taxes are, we got to do what's best for the students, right? That's one perspective. The other perspective is, we need to have the best school that we possibly can, keeping the taxes in mind. And I would say, over the years, we've had more people that have really been focused on, it doesn't matter what the taxes are, we got to do what's best for the kids. And the evidence of that is, I don't think in my time, the residents have ever voted down a school budget.
I know.
And so that tells you, either you have people that don't care, or people that complain and don't show up to vote, or you have enough people that say, okay, this is for the kids, it's all right. And then when they get their tax bill, they're like, oh man, this is a lot.
And then suddenly it's not all right.
Right, and you know that of every dollar you pay in taxes, 70 cents goes to the school. And 20% goes to the town, and 10% goes to the county. And it's really just a very lopsided in that degree. And then you also have the mindset of the superintendent, which their focus is the school and making sure they have the right teachers, making sure they have a strong special needs, special education program. And so they look at that, and I don't mean this disparagingly, they look at that state essential services programs and laugh. And they say, okay, just go to the bottom of page 6, tell us what the state's paying, and that's really all that they look at. They don't look at those other numbers. So I think, that's, maybe we'll have those discussions this year. I certainly will try to bring it up, to bring it to their attention. We had a 2-hour school board meeting last night, and so I will say there's a lot that goes on. Just like anybody that ever complains about the selectmen and then they run for selectmen, they realize, oh man, there's a lot going on. It's the same thing on the school board. You've been on the school board.
You're not running for selectmen, are you?
I'm not.
Okay.
No. So I think the school budget's obviously going to be a huge part of it, like it always is. The other big thing is revenue sharing. Now, the governor has done a good job of bringing revenue sharing back up to the full 5%. Back in the LePage administration, they really robbed revenue sharing. And so Madison would get $200,000 or $300,000 in revenue sharing. Lately, we've been getting $1 million in revenue sharing, which is great because you don't have to raise as much money from taxation. This $600,000, if I'm guessing right, is going to drop that from $1 million to about $700,000. You're going to lose about $200,000 or $300,000 in revenue sharing.
Yeah, this year we're projected to get $965,000.
Right. Right.
So it's already going down.
But my guess is, once they, that's based on 478.
Yeah,
Once they do one based on 602, you'll be lucky if you get 700,000.
yeah.
So it's just,
So we lose on both ends.
you do, yeah. So it's,
Does anybody have any questions for Tim? Any other questions for the Grim Reaper?
yeah.
I don't recall what happens when the TIF runs out at Backyard Farms. Because
So-
that's coming right up.
It's coming up in 2026.
Right.
The credit enhancement agreement
Right.
ends with Backyard Farms. The TIF is out till 2036, so it will remain sheltered. That valuation of Backyard Farms will remain sheltered until 2036.
Okay.
But right now, we're in a 20-year agreement coming to the end of it, where every dollar in taxes that they pay, we give 75 cents back. And they've utilized that their whole time. Now, they've changed ownership, and they've changed a couple of managers, but somebody's gonna figure it out pretty quick if they don't get that check in 2026. So Backyard Farms, if they're smart, will come to the table early and say, we want to extend this deal. Where you, as the selectman of the town, say, all right, let's sit down and talk about this. Maybe you extend it at 50-50. Maybe you extend it as the town keeps 75, Backyard Farm gets 25. Maybe you say, no, we're not going to extend it at all. That way the town does get a little more money out of the taxation. But then if you do that, their chess move is like, we want a complete revaluation. Because right now you're valuing us at $50 million. And if we're not getting our tax money back, we don't want to pay based on $50 million. So they'll come and say, we think it's worth $20 million. And then you're right back there with Madison paper, it's just like you did, and somebody's, gonna win, somebody's gonna lose. So, I've talked with Shirley, for the residential part of it, the town may want to consider going back to either a part-time or shared duties person that just looks at those figures in the office every day. Because there's a lot of stuff you should be chasing. All these homes that sold for overvaluation, somebody should be looking at all those tax cards, because you may be missing something. So, just as long as everybody understands, if a house sells for $640,000 and it was valued at $200,000, what's next year's valuation on that house? It's not $640,000. It may not even be $300,000 or $400,000. Part of the issue is that doesn't automatically happen. Some people think it does, but it doesn't automatically go up. And it will only go up based on what you can put into the computer system to make it go up, or override the system. So you have to do a manual override if you want to get that up higher. So a lot of people think it automatically happens, but it doesn't.
So those sales, if they're over and above the 15 or 20% of what is in Trio, does the town have the authority to put the valuation at the sale price?
You can try it, but once that person gets their tax bill, they're going to abate it, and then you have to prove why you did that. You cannot only use the sale price to justify a valuation.
Okay.
It's not just on sale. It has to be the square footage of the house, it has to be the amount of acres, it has to be the condition of the house. All those things have to go into it.
So it doesn't even matter that they were willing to pay $600,000 for a house that was valued at a third of that.
That's right.
They just felt like it, and now they want their taxes to stay at $200,000.
I think they're willing to understand that the value should go up based on that sale, but never all the way. So. I should stand.
All right. So your 15 minutes is way gone.
Yeah, I knew it would be so exciting. People wouldn't want to stop talking about it. So.
Anybody else have any questions for Tim? All right, let's go ahead and take a 5 or 10 minute break, because, some of us just need to clear our heads.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, right? Denise, we gotta take the hot air out of the room.
Oh, poor Jack, he didn't even do anything.
Do it.
You didn't do anything this time. Robin's all the way over there, so you can't get in
I
trouble.
purposely sat over here.
I sat over here just to make sure.
You two not supposed to be together, you separate?
No.
Well, Robin's a bad
It's like bring it.
Okay,
I
we're
love
on,
you too.
we're on camera, we're on tape,
Oh,
so I'm gonna suggest that we move on with our program. I'm gonna skip the technology piece for right now. It is 7:03, and I wanna spend a couple of minutes on the buildings and the space. We, at the select board meeting last night, Plymouth Engineering came and gave us their executive summary and their review. If anybody wants to see the full report from Plymouth Engineering, you got it over there, Sean? Yep. Essentially, the buildings are okay. Old Point Avenue is probably in the worst shape of any. The library is in pretty good shape, thanks to Julie taking care of some of the mold and the asbestos remediation. The number one priority that we have to address is the public library ramp. So that is probably the biggest expense and also the biggest focus for redoing the buildings. The town office is pretty much limited to what we can do. There's no space to grow. The fire station, they said the floor has a crack in it that's leading to another crack. And I don't know what that means in terms of cement floors, but it's not good. Oh yeah, the buildings, the electrical and the plumbing at the town office is not sustainable. The plumbing does not, we are not ADA compliant at the town office for restrooms, bathrooms. So there's a lot of different things that we need to focus on. And as a result of that disclosure and report last night, Chairman Venziano decided that we needed to have a building committee in the town so that we can evaluate what the priorities are. We know the first priority is the ramp at the library. That's already decided. But the other priorities, what they are, how much we should be spending on each, what we need to do to focus on these things. So if anybody is interested in volunteering with Sean on the building committee and Sally on the building committee, please let me know. Everybody's input is valuable. We want to make sure that we're trying to do the very best with the money that we have to keep the buildings that we have, or decide, are we going to sell them and liquidate them or something. Is there anything else I'm missing about last night's Plymouth Engineering report?
He mentioned stuff about HVAC systems, air quality. Definitely the electrical being close to, could be fire hazards in some of the buildings.
Yeah.
There was no place to grow the fire department because of what is there at the moment. East Madison, I think, is in the best shape.
Yep.
Because it's new.
Because it was the newer one.
The other concern was the fire trucks are getting bigger and bigger. And
And the
garage is
doors
still
are
the
not.
Does not grow.
And the doors are not getting bigger, and I think it was the pillars between the fire truck doors, you're starting to see some wear and tear, because occasionally they may get hit, they get bumped. So that's pretty dangerous.
Can I just make a correction? We haven't done any kind of asbestos remediation because we were waiting for the full report. And
Was it mold?
it was mold.
Okay.
And it was inside
A
a
closet.
double closet in the downstairs, and so it was, the building's 118 years old. Water will find its way in. We've done a couple of projects where we have waterproofed below the ground line, so it's all underneath all the windows. But there's a giant ramp, and the configuration of the building is not consistent. We have wings sticking out here and there, so you can't get equipment in. So the entire building has not been waterproofed. Below grade, or if that's what that's called. But probably 2/3 of it have been. We found an abandoned and bricked up entrance when we did the second side and sealed that. So it was, you know, it was bricked in, but mortar shifts over 100 years. And so we had our janitor, Jeff came over, Bobby does janitorial work. He pulled out the wall between the two closets because it's just, you know, you open two doors and then you're like, oh, now you can see on this side. And the trustees and myself, we said, hey, we're not gonna put any money into putting sheetrock back up inside a closet, that those closets are locked. And so on the possibility that it will leak again, because we don't know where the water's coming from.
Right.
We haven't found it since then. We check periodically, and so that's taken care of. We just don't know if we can. One of the projects that the trustees have been talking about is putting carpet squares in the children's room. It's easier if there's some staining. You don't have to pull the whole carpet up. You can just replace the high traffic areas. Carpet squares are more expensive than regular carpet, so we've been kind of holding off. But we need to know for sure, do we have to do anything to the tiles? Because there are a couple that are cracked, there are a couple that were broken before I was hired 25 years ago. They haven't broken anymore, but are they fine? Can we just cover them? What do we do? So we haven't done that yet, but we're certainly, and the trustees have said, as far as the ramp and the flooring obviously will be much less expensive than the ramp. They believe, and I agree, that legally, for a town building, legally we need ADA entrance to the building. And the ramp is one thing. I'd like to see something else built in. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I have a little girl that lives down the street, and her mom said she would come to any meeting that we asked her to come to. She was ill when she was young, and she has partial paralysis, and she cannot get the doors open or closed. She can't come into the library unless somebody comes with her. She can't get out of the library unless somebody goes with her. And she loves
you
reading.
don't have the handicap buttons?
We don't have, no.
The auto
No.
doors?
And we have the levers that are used for, you know, if people have problems with grip strength. But her grip strength is to a point where she can't do that. The door in the front of the building, the lock is from 1920. We only know that because we tried to replace it, and there's a big hole in the door, and we said, well, we're gonna put this back on here, and we're gonna be careful. And they don't make the blanks for the key anymore, so we had to go, I had to go Bob Cross's when he was still alive, God bless him, and he made me 4 keys. So now it's like, if somebody gets done work, I'm like, I need your key, right now, I'm sorry to see you go, but give that back. And so we can't change that, but for the ramp, a door, and maybe even a little awning, so because there has to be a 6-foot flat space at the top, so it makes sense that there would be an awning or some kind of enclosure so that you don't get clocked. We do have those roof things, whatever they're called, snow breaks,
yeah.
over that door. But if somebody is in a wheelchair and they get to the door, right now, there's no way for them to open the door. They have to kind of call us and say, hey, can you come open this door? It's unlocked, but how are you supposed to maneuver a wheelchair and pull on a door at the same time? So that's all one piece. And while we're asking for even more things, the dream package is that we would have parking, designated handicap parking, on that side of the building. It makes no sense to park on Pleasant Street and to walk, because not everybody who uses the handicap ramp or an ADA compliant ramp is in a wheelchair. Some people can't walk stairs. Lots of people can't walk stairs. So they park on Pleasant Street, they walk up the walkway, they walk all the way around to the other building, up the ramp to get inside, which makes no sense. So we cheat a little bit of the lawn, and we have 1 or 2 parking spaces right there. So, there. So thank you for saying we can have that. I appreciate it.
Well-
I'm going home now.
Well, before you leave, let me just say that Somerset County offers grants for the community betterment. And I think this is an opportunity, you know, maybe not this go-around, but this would be a project that we could collaborate on a grant for Somerset County. I think the grants are up to 15,000 matching. So they were saying that the ramp replacement with concrete would be 28 to 35.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, we
If
got
it
an
was
estimate a
cement,
few years ago, and they were using slabs. So the configuration would be different, because you can't, you know, cut a slab to go around the corner. And their estimate was 52.
Okay.
But that was not demolition or site prep. That was coming to a beautiful clean slate and installing something. So,
All right. Yes.
I'd encourage anybody that wants to show up when we do the building committee to come. If you know other people, invite them. Plymouth Engineering's actually gonna be present. They're gonna work with us through this and do recommendations, to advise us. They're ready to go. They just need a game plan. So our game plan, we talked about last night, is setting up a 5-year and a 10-year plan, so we can convey to Plymouth what we're looking at as the first items we wanna tackle. So it's gonna be an ongoing process, but we know where our buildings are at now, and we gotta start working to
well, and I
get
think we heard loud and clear from the townspeople that they didn't want to buy a new building. So if they don't want to buy a new building, then they probably don't want to build a new building. So then the only recourse we have is to fix the buildings that we have. And the only benefit to that is that we don't have to pay out all of the money at the same time as we would for the purchase.
Right.
But we've also we gotta cost things out.
Yeah. I'm glad we're first on the list. I probably will be working in 10 years, but you never know.
I'm sure you will.
I'll probably be using the ramp, so.
That's why you want that automatic
Well,
building.
yes.
Sean, when are your meetings for the building committee?
I don't know if we said it yet.
No, we haven't said anything.
We'll definitely get the word out.
Are you interested in being on that committee?
Just ask.
I thought you volunteered.
I didn't ask last night, I just laughed because I knew they were gonna go. Easy.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, thank you.
I wouldn't mind being on that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the Plymouth engineering study or comments about any of the town buildings? Whatever we decide to do, we've gotta take it to the planning board anyway, regardless if it's a town building. We gotta make sure that the planning board approves whatever we wanna do, so. Mary, you're gonna be on the hook for that, at least for another year.
Right, some of those things you're talking about wouldn't need to be brought to the planning board anyway. If they're just simple, you know,
Improvements.
repairs, yeah, mold remediation, asbestos abatement, that's, you know, that wouldn't come for us.
Okay.
But certainly if you were adding on or changing the configuration of the building or the use, so, but it's to be determined.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. The next thing I want to just mention is the PFAS, Anson Madison Sanitary District project. Peter, are you and Dale gonna come before the board with Jimmy Ward?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, on December 9th.
Yes.
So, Monday, December 9th, we'll have the Anson Madison Sanitary District and Dirigo Engineering before the select board, and the planning board is invited to participate in that, so that, you know, because we want to get we have some concerns and we have some questions, so.
What time?
The select board's at 6:30. They usually have a few technical things that they go through first, so probably by 6:15. I mean, 7:15, thank you. I was looking at my clock the wrong way.
Daylight savings time.
My clock's going this way.
So this isn't a separate meeting, this is part of the select board?
It's gonna be part of the select board meeting, but it will be, high up on the old business. So, so if you guys can be prepared to talk about, you know, what's the game plan, what do you hope to accomplish, you know, what the
I mean,
time.
I could answer questions tonight.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, I mean, what is it, what it's, I mean, I know what PFAS are, but is that something that, what I know about that is that they say, don't eat deer that you kill in Skowhegan because there's PFAS. So, is it a remediation, is it a preventive thing?
So, yeah, so there are PFAS compounds in most everything that comes into the treatment plant. So what we're really doing is enhancing current treatment. So I think there's this notion out there that it's to bring in, you know, waste, PFAS waste. But really, the fact is that the different waste streams that are coming into the treatment plant now contain, that even means the sanitary sewers, people's septic tanks, right? Landfill leachate, all these things that are generated from human waste, basically, whether it be municipal solid waste that's in trash or, you know, what goes down the sewer, has these compounds in it. And so regulation around these compounds was inevitable. So we basically have sort of got out early to get funding to be able to put processes in place to enhance the current treatment plan.
Now we know, thanks.
Sure.
So it was, I think we understood that there's gonna be a new project started to a new plant facility. Is that just a rumor?
It's really just an additional process, right? So it'll be on the end of all of our processes before discharge into the river.
Okay.
But it will be in its own building, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So it's all part of the process, it's just
It's
leading to
part of
that
the
end
process.
process.
Right? It's an enhancement to the existing process, right?
Kind of like double filtering something.
Now, is there truth where you're gonna be allowing from other areas to come in and also use the facility, like other states and things?
So we already received waste from a regional area, really. And so that's already the case now.
They all use Nickel Street to get there. All
They're
of
not
them.
supposed to be using Nickel Street.
They're using Nickel Street, I'll
They're
tell
not
you that
supposed
right
to.
now. I hear them,
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe you could ask them not to, but they do.
They're not supposed to. but,
And,
yeah.
and they do drive very quickly to try to get off of Nickel Street too, so
They know you're watching.
everybody should know.
Well,
Get
I
the
actually,
plate number.
I actually have reached out to Lieutenant Knight, and asked him that the Somerset Patrol in Madison keeps an eye on that, because none of the big trucks are supposed to go on Nickel Street
Right.
or Edward Street or those side streets. They're all supposed to use Kennebec Street to Pine Street.
Kind of picture.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the giant trucks, but there are a lot of trucks,
The
and I've seen
smaller.
some of the longer ones.
Yeah, the
Some of the regular, the ones that are pumping out, you know,
homes.
septic tanks and that kind of thing. It's also, I mean, if I can just offer this, a friend of mine drives down Pine Street to get to their job, and she sometimes gets in a tangle because there's like a traffic jam on Pine Street. And so there's one that's pulled up into Perkins Street, and then there's one that's parked on this side of Pine Street. And I understand that it's necessary, and it generates revenue, and we need it. But, so I told her, don't take Pine Street.
So next spring, one of the early plans, truck traffic, in control of that traffic is obviously an issue, right? I mean, it's very apparent. We don't like it either. And so one of the first things we'll be doing next year is expanding the entrance into the plant. So trucks will be able to come in to the plant and turn around and back down and
And
on.
Instead of
or-
turning around in the middle of
Instead
Pine
of turning
Street.
around
And
on
back
Pine
in.
Street, and there'll also be at least, well, there'll be, depending on the size of the truck, there'll be 2 to 4 staging spots. So that should solve a lot of the problem. There'll still be trucks on Pine Street.
Well,
They
and-
shouldn't be on Nickel Street, but,
Well, I appreciate that information,
yeah.
because, you know, it's all part of the process, but it's good to know that it's being addressed.
Any questions? Okay. So do you want, Mary, do you want to just touch base on the comprehensive plan? I know we were in the process, or the planning board's in the process of updating the 2014. Tim had some work done on it, 2022, I think, before he left.
Yes, we are currently working on the transportation and the housing portion of that. Mostly it's KB Cog doing that for us. But our goal is to have the entire plan ready by the beginning of March so that it can be sent to the select board for your consideration, because I believe we have to have a hearing on, public hearing on that. And then after that, it would go to the select board so that it could be ready for the June meeting, town meeting on there. So this next planning board meeting will be looking at the draft of the transportation section, and that will include the new ATV issues or legislation, the ordinance, whatever we have there for that. And then later will be the housing. So those were the two primary ones. And then we will be going back and looking at all of the others that Tim had already written and making sure those are current as of this year. So that's our goal. So it's, you know, trying to get it to you by March is, get it done by March is, could be a challenge, but.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right, thank you. So that just brings us to technology. And so there's a couple of things on the technology side. I'm gonna skip the clerk suite for right now. I wanna talk about dual monitors for workstations. Peter, in the sanitary district, do your operators have dual workstations? Could they live with just one monitor?
I personally could not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah. Patrick, do you have two?
Oh, yeah, I've had 2 for many, many years.
All right. So I think the town office is really at a disadvantage right now in only having single monitors, especially for Heidi and for Cheyenne, and maybe myself, I don't know. I have enough with one monitor, but, so that's something that I want to make as a priority if we have money in this budget to get those dual monitors and the stands to hold those monitors. So, yes.
Prior to my retirement, last year, I had 3 monitors that I was using, and I had gone from 2 to 3, and it made a big difference. I couldn't, now going back to one monitor would have just been, it really slows things down. So having your dual monitors really increases efficiency. And for those of you that have multiple windows open, I'd suggest even 3 myself. But I would think monitors aren't that expensive in this day and age.
Right.
So it's depending on your computers, your docking station, whether you can easily.
I think what the cost is like, would be main technologies.
Yeah.
Having them come in because we can't do anything without them.
Is that our IT people?
Yeah. We're a managed service for them. And so, I mean, we could try putting in the monitors ourselves, but then in order to program the second monitor, we'd have to call on main technology to get that done.
Not to program anything, just
No.
your control and
Just go into
set your
Windows,
monitors.
set the 2
So,
monitors.
all right, so we can try that without going through Main Technology.
You already pay main technology? You pay
Yeah.
them, then why would you want to try it yourself?
Because I like a challenge.
Well, good for you. Kudos to you.
Do you have standalone computers, or are you attached to a server?
They are standalone computers, but they are networked. So they're not thin clients. We get the whole box. Each person has their own CPU, thank you.
So do you, are you using Trio's online package?
No, we're using Trio SQL right now. And,
So, just pretend
okay.
that there's a world where people don't have dual monitors,
Mhm.
called the library.
Or the
And-
town office.
Or the town office. And if anyone was watching this, they'd be like, what? Why do you need two monitors? So, what, do you keep more things open on the other monitor? Do you use one for Zoom calls? What do you do on both monitors? I'm just curious.
You can move documents back and forth. If you're looking at one thing, you have a document here. If you need it over here for some reason, you can move it back. You can have 3 different documents. I get very confused if I have multiple windows open and I don't know which one I'm trying to find. And this way I could spread it out.
Okay.
And it just makes it email on one, the spreadsheet on another one. And even then, I still have multiple documents open on all 3. So I don't know how.
That's exactly how I do it.
But just to be able to move from your documents around just makes it so easy that you're looking at, so.
I usually have email, I use 3 sometimes too, email and then just folders open, and then a spreadsheet or whatever document I'm working on.
Okay.
And also, like, it's really handy if you're doing Zoom calls,
Oh, yeah.
like if you do, or Teams calls, because you can have documents open here and then have the Teams on over there.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is,
library work is very different than office work.
yeah,
I have office work to do, but it's not the extent
yeah.
of like running a quasi-business, like an entity. So that's why I was like, well, I just use a split screen and just make my windows smaller and put them both on the same monitor. But I use a computer, but I don't use it all day long.
Yeah.
So,
Do you do
Could
Zoom
you help
calls
with
or whatever at the library?
when I have to.
Yeah.
It feels like we've done like 7,000 of them by now, but, so, not usually.
Now, do you two have, using laptops or are you using the
Besides
CPUs?
laptop.
Both.
Because we had laptops, so I don't know how that went, how you took that up with.
I know I use a laptop and Cheyenne uses a laptop. Everybody else has desktops. But our laptops are connected to the network,
Right.
to the single monitors. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I just chuckle, and probably, Julie and I graduated together, so we're from the same generation.
Last great class from Madison High, 1985.
Same generation. But I was thinking, well, if I had dual screens, I could watch the Great British Baking Show on one. I had my email on
And
it.
have your Zoom call where you had your video and audio blank, so you just had a black screen and then you could watch your show.
Doesn't the finance office already have 2 screens? I thought for sure Tammy Ferry.
No, Tammy wanted one, but she was never granted the permission. That's what she told me. She says, you need a dual screen in
I must have
here.
misremembered that.
Yeah, like for me, it's like, with finance especially, I mean, there's a lot of times I'm cross, like with Excel and Trio, I have to shrink one and take numbers, and then I have to put it up, and then I have to put the numbers in, and I have to shrink it back down again, or comma paste or something, and it drives me bananas, because I have worked with dual screens for years, so to go back to a single screen, I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Well, and you're on the computer for 8 hours,
Yeah.
and I'm probably on it, on average, I'm probably on it 2 or 3.
If you have a desktop, make sure
Why
you
can't you
get
just
video
have a
card.
second screen now?
Why doesn't she, or why can't
Yeah.
she?
Well, I need one of those, what do they call them, those splitters, or whatever, the things on the top, where you can have the extra USB things where you can connect
Oh,
into.
there's only one port on here.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a limited CPU, it doesn't have a lot on it. I
Nice.
think it was probably, they built it mean, it works, we can probably do it, but I know some of the programming, you have to do something in the settings to allow for dual screen.
Right.
So, and I don't know if Trio does it automatically or
Yeah,
what,
it's
so.
just through Windows.
Yeah.
Windows sets up, you just need to make sure if you have a desktop that your video card can handle 2 monitors.
Yeah.
Because I know with QuickBooks, I had to do something
I'm just saying.
separate or something, I remember one time, but I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
Video card.
So video card has to handle 2 monitors, okay.
And those are older computers that you have?
Well, they were there when I got there, so I don't know, Tim, when those computers were actually
Jill's
installed.
crashed last year.
Her hard drive crashed. We got the hard drive replaced.
Oh, so the computer's the same age, okay.
So there was, prior to Maine Technology Group. The Maine Technology Group, I think we started with them in 22, somewhere around there. Prior to that, basically, we relied on Tammy Carrier in-house to try to take care of everything. And then Tim McDonald from Computer Improvements in Somerset County, and then a little bit from Computer Improvements. And Tammy realized quickly we were outgrowing all of that. And Computer Improvements is a great little company, but they can't offer the IT support that a municipality needs. Skowhegan is going through this exact same thing right now, where they need to upgrade everything. And they're losing their person that knows where everything is. Jeff Hewitt's retired. So, so when Tammy got done, we had already transitioned over to Maine Technology Group. And at that time, if I recall, we were replacing all of the CPUs. And we put in a new server as well. That server is new. Tim McDonald, may he rest in peace, he created our server based on leftover parts from the Sheriff's Department. And so that's what we ran on with like a hope and a prayer for many years. And we have a backup that's located at the library, so everything.
No, not anymore.
It's not at the
I took
library?
it, I don't know where it went.
Okay, so Maine Technology Group.
It's not there.
So
Kevin said, you don't need this here anymore.
So Maine Technology Group now is in charge of the server that they put in and the backups. So, I mean, there's really just a matter of working with them. They're one of the only games in town. When we came on with them, they only had 3 municipal contracts, now they have 30. And so that, working with their group, they should have a replacement schedule for the office. As far as, so we're not working on Windows 7, you're not working on 20-year-old computers. So they're all updated when we started with Maine Technology Group, but there should be a plan to keep that moving forward.
There is. And our new service rep from Maine Technology actually lives at 55 Weston Avenue.
Hey, there you go.
So,
Maybe they can give you a good deal on that.
and one of the things that he's working on right now is getting that computer audit done so that he can tell us which ones are the oldest that need to be replaced first, and so that we can cycle through those.
I know I've said a lot of things, I'd like to say a couple more.
One more? Yeah, okay.
When we talk about these things, and I appreciate it, because we've done this at the library, where it's not too far away from the truth to say, we cobbled together a server based on this and that and this and that. And then Denise and Heidi are like, maybe we can do these things ourselves. And at the library, we're like, well, do we really need to replace this? Let's just hang on to it and, print paper copies of everything in case you lose the hard drive. And there's something to be said for can-do-it mentality. And then there's something to be said for, look, we're a municipality, we do good work. If we need a new server, we have to buy one. If the school needs a new server, they buy one. If Timber HP needs one, they buy one. And they have professionals install it.
Yep.
It's good for us to all know how to do these things. I mean, I troubleshoot and try to sort things out and figured out what was wrong with the printer and why is there black on the side of the margin and all that stuff, because there's no one else to do it. But it kind of diminishes the public's view sometimes of the value and the work that people are doing when we're just trying to do this all behind the scenes so that we're trying to save and trying to save and trying to save. So I'm not saying I'm never gonna fix anything again, I'm just saying sometimes we just have to say, I don't know how to fix the ramp. Can we hire someone? I don't even know how to get an estimate. I don't build ramps. So, that's pretty much what I told the trustees. Sometimes we have to say, I don't know how to do this, let's find someone who knows how to do this, and pay them. So, I
All
think we
good
do a
point,
good
all
job
valid.
not going crazy with the money, since we have 20 cents from every dollar. I just think sometimes we have to bite the bullet and buy what we need to buy, and that's why we're here, to prioritize. And if the ramp wasn't first, I'd accept it, because I would say, well, according to the report, and the rules are the rules, this is more valuable, this is more priority. So, there, I'm done, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate the perspective. Mary,
Since you already have your contract with, what is it?
Main Technology
Main
Group.
Technology Group, they're doing the inventory for you, you know, as part of that, they can just go ahead and upgrade, you know, with your, give you your monitors and help you install those, because your time is valuable.
Mhm.
And,
I agree.
I mean, it's one thing to learn, like I agree with Julie, because it's one thing to learn how to do that, because I like learning about it. But you know, when everybody's involved, and it would increase your efficiency in the end. And it would be a greater benefit to go and get it done.
I'd also say that sometimes with the complication of some of the equipment today, we can make really bad mistakes
Yes.
trying to do it
Yes.
ourselves as well.
Yes. So I've heard somebody say, you know, look, if you're having a problem, just call me, because it's easier for me to come fix it, to come do it, than it is to try to fix what you break. So I hear exactly what you're saying, Sal.
That is true, yeah.
I think Jack knows who said that.
I think he might.
I mean, it's not like you can just get the thing and Amazon delivers it and you plug it in. There's been a lot of other stuff that has to go along with that, so it's not like it's.
No, that is pretty much it, but there's,
No.
but again, that's,
Dealt with too many
But we're already
Yeah.
paying for the service, like you said.
So-
If we're
When it's
paying
done,
for that
and then they go
service.
back to
exactly,
the
if we're
town.
paying for the service, we should be doing it. Okay. Okay. So dual monitors for the workstations, I think, is a priority under technology. Mary, you also asked for a wall monitor for the Zoom meetings in the meeting room. And I've been looking at the prices for that, and I think we can get a reasonable 65-inch, 70-inch with a wall mount for under $500. So, and there is already Wi-Fi in the meeting room at Old Point Avenue, so that would be an easy transition to, you know, to get it logged in for Zoom meetings and things. And that would help
Presentations, you know, because people could be.
presentations, and you'd be able to see who's on the Zoom calls, and that would help the board of selectmen too, board of select people, as well. So, and I think if we can do that, there's also a group that is using the Old Point Avenue right now, the small meeting room, for the Senior Community Service Employment Program. And what they're doing is workforce development, and they're trying to get older people that are not currently working, that want to get back into the workforce to do something, trained and put them out there in volunteer positions to start with, so that they can get into a working job. So these folks, the Senior Community Service Employment Program, would also be using that monitor for training purposes and things. So I think that's another piece of technology that will bring us further ahead than the cost of it taking us behind. So that's a good use of money, in my estimation. We've also had some discussions in the town office about document scanning and storage, so that our vault right now is at capacity, pretty much. What would you say? Do we have much room for anything down there?
She's She's usually pretty positive.
I don't wanna put you on the spot or anything, but I need to use words.
Well, we
There's
have,
a lot of permanent records that we can't get rid of, and each year that passes, we only get more permanent records that we can't get rid of. I think we have time, but personally in my office, I have explored scanning them on my drive and doing paper filing moving forward, except for the one book of permanent records that I can't store that way. I think it would be wise for the rest of the office to start doing that unless we're getting a bigger vault in the next 50 years.
well, I think too is with the move to digital, we have the laws and things that we have to, regulations that we follow for retention. And certain records, like even employment records, we have to keep for 60 years. But we-
60 years?
60 years, but that does not mean it has to be paper. We could digitalize it and put it on the cloud, which will save a lot of space, as long as we can have it somewhere. Every meeting, any time we have something, minutes have to be retained. There's a retention period for an application that we receive for employment that we have to keep for 3 years. So, I mean, you keep adding all these papers up, where do you keep storing them? I have file cabinets since I've been in the finance office that, I mean, thank God I have the ones that go back to Tammy, but I mean, they go back years. And we don't need to have all that stuff in that office. And there's no room in the vault, so we have to make a move towards some kind of scanning technique that we can, when we have the time, start moving those documents.
And because there's a privacy issue, you have to have town employees only doing the scanning.
Wow,
This isn't something that you can,
and if, I mean, let's be honest too, I mean, when you listen to Plymouth and they're talking about the wiring at the town office, that building goes up, how many records are gonna be destroyed?
All of them.
We don't have a lot of backup, but we have what we have electronically right now, but the paper-wise, we don't.
Yeah.
So we'd lose records for years, all because we don't have anything on backup.
well, what I'm saying also is that someone in the audience at a town meeting or something is gonna say, oh, well, can we get a volunteer to do that?
Right, yeah.
And I don't work at the town office, and I'm very, very meticulous, and I would be an absolute wreck, and we'd be checking 6, 7 times to make sure this document's scanned in there, you know, before I flipped it over and scanned the next one, so I don't think it's sure, we'll all just sit around and it's gonna be incredibly labor intensive.
Yeah, it sounds like a Herculean effort for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have found that in scanning in, because the start of this fiscal year, I started fully scanning in all of the documents that I process every single day. Cash receipt reports down to anything to do with the elections, and I scan it in, I label, and I sort them every day. And it's become easier in my office because now I can go and search something that happened a month ago, and I can find it in seconds.
Yeah.
Versus having to sort through my files to remember where I put it, or it's somewhere else. So there is that factor too. By moving into scanning documents, we can become more organized and more efficient.
So do you keep the document once it's scanned?
Yeah.
So you have paper and electronic?
Yeah, and then I'm holding them for a year, but I'm gonna follow the electronic retention schedule for the records that I'm scanning in. But I'm keeping everything for the first year. And then what I've done with all of the scanned documents that have been done in the past with clerks before me is put them on a memory stick, just in case something is to happen.
So even if we started with the oldest records, like employment records from 60 years ago or something, you must have just unbelievable amounts of paper because
We
everything
have
is paper.
2 file cabinets, drawers that are probably half of this table, as deep as this, and I can't fit any more in. Just for employment, and that's just ours, that doesn't count the police department, because they're their own drawer.
Right. Which is getting full.
It is tight down in the vault to kind of put in a bunch of all the election
Yes, I can remember following Kathy Estes down, and it was like one of those puzzles where there's one piece missing, and you just move things around the way, the best you could.
It's like Donnie had to go down with me yesterday because he had to get an invoice back from 21 from one of the warrants. And we were able to find it pretty quick, and he just is looking around, and he's just looking around, and he goes, I don't think this is very fireproof. I'm like, thanks, Donnie.
Yes.
Has there been thought to hire an intern or to start, what if you, when you get ready to proceed to start scanning older documents, hire an intern to do those that are not confidential? You know, like your meeting minutes from the various meetings?
We haven't got that far in the process yet, but
Invoices.
definitely an intern would be a useful employee in that regard. But the other piece of the whole scanning piece is, right now we have a copy scanner that we can use to do our day-to-day stuff and scan things in and email them to ourselves. If we go down this road for document scanning, we're gonna have to invest in equipment that's gonna actually do all the scanning, you know? And there's equipment out there that will scan 100 pages a minute, and it'll capture both sides of the page. So I think the opportunity exists. Is it the priority right now? Probably not, especially after the grim news we heard, you know? But still, I think it's an important thing as we look forward in terms of what are we gonna do to move our town forward and keep us in the 21st century without going back to the 20th century. We need to be able to identify those aspects of technology that would be very useful. And I think
It's hard too, is the document prep, because even when you open up a file, they're paper clipped, they're stapled, so it's gonna be labor intensive, team. I mean, all I can think back is when we were doing that at Lori's office, and Ally Dean sitting there for the whole summer, just trying to get as many files as she could uploaded.
It's definitely a challenge,
Are
but
there
it's,
companies that do that?
yes.
So I'm sure you'll be looking into whether or not it's more cost effective to hire someone to do it, buy the equipment, just have the company, like when you have on-site shredding and.
Right. So one of the challenges to hiring another company to do it is you would have to send the records to the company. And as permanent records for the town, I don't think they're allowed to leave the municipality or maybe even the town office, I don't know. So, you know, things like that, that's just one example, but the employment records, the applications and the personnel reviews and things like of that nature could be, you know, we could send them out, but you're always taking a risk when you send documents out to be scanned, that something can go wrong.
Right.
And then you're putting people's personal information at risk. But that, it is an option. Anybody else have any questions or comments about document scanning? Does the county scan documents right now? Do you have somebody that scans on a regular basis, or?
No, the departments do. Like deed scans all their documents, probate. We scan everything into Trio, so everything's scanned. Yeah, it's not just one application. Deed's got a separate vendor that they use for their documents. I don't know who probate uses.
But, and deeds are actually available online, right? The scanned images are available online. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so just real briefly, I want to talk about the electronic voting devices. In the past year, we've had 3 or 4 or 5 town ballots where we had to check a box and put it in the ballot box, and then Cheyenne and her folks had to count the ballots. This little device is it's just a spongy thing, but it's, that's the size of an actual device. And these would be handed out one per person. I'll send them down that way. One per person as they come into the town meeting. And then it would be a matter of, when the article comes up to vote, people would just click the yes button or the no button. And at the end, when the voting has closed, it would display on the screen what the actual count is within seconds. It's something that would certainly take a lot off your plate in that counting and ballot prep. And the other thing is that it's a tool that could be shared with other municipalities. So like Anson has their town meeting in March, we have our town meeting in June. We could share the cost and the benefit of this with Anson, with Solon, with Norridgewock, and you know, they come in a case and they stand up in the case and they all just charge until you need them, and then you hand them out one at a time. So each one of those gadgets has a serial number on it. So as you're checking people in at the town meeting, you would just check them in, and if you wanted to keep track of the serial number, you could, so that you would know if it doesn't come back, who has it. It does not track who voted for what. So even with the serial number, you couldn't say, okay, I'm gonna look and see what item 23 voted for, you know? So that's something that is probably not a priority for this coming budget. It is something that I wanna look at going forward. I should have probably sent this around with it, because this is what the screen would look like.
Any local areas using them?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember who it was. There's like 3 or 4 of them at least in Maine, and trying to think where it is. I'll get that information.
I was just curious
Yeah.
to know how it works and
Yeah.
how what they think about it.
Well, here, you can pass that way.
What's the cost on those in these?
Well, that's something that I haven't finished getting that information yet. I think it's under $10,000.
How
And that-
many?
For how many?
Yes.
For us, it would be 2,500 to 3,000. I don't know how many registered voters we have.
Yeah, but we don't have that many people show up at
Right,
town
so we
meeting.
wouldn't need that many.
I mean, we had a huge turnout, this year for town meeting.
And it
that
was under 250.
Yeah, it was under 250.
Budget goes up, you might have more.
Yeah, so, but that's why I say we could collaborate with some of the other communities in the surrounding area, and somebody that's got a March town meeting or a June town meeting, you know, we can share the expense and we can share the benefit with them. So that's something that I wanna at least investigate further. It probably will not be for the 25-26 budget. And then the last thing that is on my technology list, and this in fact is something that we have, you want to send it that way? That we have in fact signed up for already, and we're in the groundbreaking phase. I got like 3 minutes to go, so. I'm hurrying, I promise I'm hurrying. It's called Town Cloud. It's a financial suite. It's gonna take us out of the Trio environment. And it gives us a chance to do all of our financing, our financials, the motor vehicles, main clerk suite, which is the tax billing and collections, advanced Department of Motor Vehicles, dog licensing, cash receipts, fund accounting, payroll. If we wanted to use it for payroll, we could do that. And there's just so much more. It's a web-based program that is, it's new to the municipal industry for accounting, and I'm very excited about it. We have signed in on the ground floor, and what it gives us is a 10-year lock-in on the price. So we're at $15,000 a year for 10 years. And right now, we're paying almost $30,000 a year for Trio. The Trio sequel, which is end of life. They keep telling us, well, you've got, you know, hurry up and go to the Trio web, because we're gonna shut off Trio sequel.
Wasn't there an article in the news recently about this, or some similar system?
Yeah, so Farmington has signed on for it, Vassalboro's looking at it, Solon's looking at it, we've signed on, China, Dayton, I know we're one of like a handful that has signed on at the ground floor. They haven't released the program yet, and when they do, when we transition, they're gonna take care of all of the data exportation from Trio and import into Town Cloud. They're gonna make sure everything balances the way that it's supposed to balance. They're gonna make sure that we are running simultaneously on parallel with Trio and Town Cloud, so that everything, we can document that, okay, this is what Trio says we should have, this is what we have in Town Cloud, let's make sure it matches. So I'm pretty excited about that. So it's about 8 o'clock. Does anybody have any questions or anything you want to bring up or add? All right. I don't know that we need to have another meeting, probably not before budget, but I think I've got some really good notes on what the priorities are that we need to focus on. If anybody has any questions or suggestions or anything like that in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. I've got some to-go boxes back there. Please help yourself to some of the food. Take it with you so I don't have to bring it back to the office. 8 o'clock on the dot.
Good job.